Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to talk about the legendary tier IJN destroyer Shimakaze, a ship that many people consider to be overpowered. And in fact, that is what I want to discuss. The idea that the Shimakaze is overpowered. Is it really? Or is there something else to it? Now, this game may not be the best example to use for this discussion because I am going to end up doing about 180,000 damage, and I'm going to do it by hitting a grand total of 9 torpedoes. So these torpedoes, they do a lot of damage, right? I think that is probably one of the primary reasons that people think the Shimakaze is overpowered, because these torpedoes have a ridiculous alpha strike. It's well over 20k, and they can hit things for well over 20k. You don't need to hit all of the torpedoes that the Shimakaze launches. After all, it launches 15 torpedoes at one time. You really only need to hit 1 or 2 torpedoes to deal a crippling amount of damage to a lot of ships. So for our very first torpedo salvo, we're putting it out here toward the path where this Bismarck is going, and we're also spotting an Edinburgh, which just happens to be right there. So these are dual-purpose torpedoes. They could hit the Bismarck, they could also hit the Edinburgh. Dual purpose. Meanwhile, our RPF indicator is pointing out somewhere, or it was at least, to the sort of right of the screen. That indicates that an enemy destroyer is in these parts. Now, we do end up hitting the Edinburgh with 1 torpedo. It's enough to take him down by doing 21,000 damage. And then a couple more of our torpedoes hit the Bismarck. They also cause a permanent flood that he doesn't appear to be able to stop. If the torpedoes had had just a little bit more range, they would have hit that Yamato back there as well and done even more damage. So this example right here, as this Bismarck, floods to his demise, this example might have you thinking that the Shimakaze is overpowered just because it managed to take down 2 ships and almost essentially clear this flank instantly. But I really don't think that's the case. I think these enemy ships could have been a little bit more aware that they were being spotted. The Edinburgh in particular, he could have started maneuvering, he could have turned around, he could have gotten in smoke perhaps, used his sonar. Bismarck could have used his sonar as well. These torpedoes on the Shimakaze, while they do hit hard, they do tend to spread out, at least in my experience, more than any other torpedoes. Maybe not more than any other torpedoes, but they spread out a lot. There's a lot of room between each torpedo for an enemy ship to dodge. And that's why, even though I launched 15 torpedoes in that initial salvo, I only landed 3 of them. That's not a huge torpedo hit ratio. And again, that's because these torpedoes spread out so much. But also, another thing about these torpedoes is they get spotted from, I think, 1.7, 1.8 kilometers away. And that's before the enemy ship's skills, commander skills, or modules come in for increasing the torpedo spotting range. Some enemy ships might be spotting these torpedoes well over 2 kilometers away from themselves, and that gives you plenty of time to dodge, despite the fact that the torpedoes are very fast. In fact, if you know the direction that IJN torpedo boat torpedoes are coming from, they become exceedingly easy to dodge, at least in my experience. You just have to know where they're coming from, and as long as you're paying attention to your map, it's really not that hard to know. So I don't think it's the torpedoes that really make the Shimakaze overpowered. Yes, they hit hard, but if you know what you're doing, they're pretty easy to dodge, and even if they do hit hard, unless you catch somebody flat broadside that really has no idea that you're there, you're probably only going to hit 1, 2, maybe 3 torpedoes at best per torpedo volley. So there's that. The thing, however, that I think could contribute to making the Shimakaze somewhat overpowered or very overpowered, depending on your point of view, and also a thing that I think encourages poor gameplay on the part of your typical Shimakaze player is the ridiculous number you can get the Shima's concealment down to. Now, you saw moments ago that we dispensed with the enemy Shimakaze by hitting him with a torpedo. Did you also notice that we spotted that enemy Shimakaze at 4.5 kilometers? Or actually, I'm sorry, it's the other way around, 5.4 kilometers. Our detectability is 4.9 kilometers, so we've got quite a bit on that enemy Shima. And that concealment is incredibly powerful. The Shimakaze is not a very good gunboat at all. It's got 6 guns, but they take forever to turn and forever to reload. So you should shoot them when you come up against enemy destroyers, make no mistake about that. You shouldn't simply try to torpedo them, but they're not very good guns. So the best thing the Shimakaze can do when it comes to countering other enemy destroyers is outspot them. And I think 4.9 kilometer detectability is honestly just a little bit too much. Now, you can use that to outspot enemy destroyers, and that's a very potent tool in your arsenal, as I've been saying. But I don't think most Shimakaze players do tend to use that concealment to spot enemy destroyers. In fact, I think they tend to use it most often to sneak as close to enemy battleships as possible before launching their torpedoes, because they want to see big damage numbers flash up on their screen. And frankly, my opening move in this game to come out wide on the flank, spot that Edinburgh, that Bismarck, and torpedo the both of them, that was a risky move. If you go back to the very beginning of the video, you'll note that I was incredibly far away from my teammates. The Edinburgh was only 8 kilometers away from me, and my nearest teammate was much further than that. If the enemy Shimakaze had been a little bit more aggressive and had chosen to push into me and spot me, I would have been very close to his teammates in the Edinburgh and the Bismarck, and they would have immediately opened fire on me and probably done a good deal of damage. So that Shimakaze sort of let his team down by not even attempting to counter me and not even attempting to spot. In fact, I outspotted him, and that sort of led to his demise there at my hand. But I think most Shimakaze players just try to get as close to battleships as they possibly can from 5 kilometers away and launch torpedoes at what is essentially point-blank range. I don't think that should be possible to the Shimakaze or to any other destroyers. In fact, I think destroyers overall need a global concealment nerf. I think getting as close to the enemy as humanly possible is potentially a high-risk, high-reward type of gameplay, but I don't think you should be allowed to get quite as close to the enemy without being spotted as the Shimakaze can. I think it's just a little bit too much. So in that sense, I would agree with some of what I would call the broad community consensus that the Shimakaze is broken. It's not because of its torpedoes. Again, I submit to you that these torpedoes are some of the easiest torpedoes to dodge if you know where they're coming from, due to the fact that they spread out so far, and the fact that you can see them from so far away without even specking into anti-torpedo things like increasing the torpedo's visibility. There are commander skills for that, there are module skills for that. So as long as you know where the torpedoes are coming from and you're able to take evasive action, they're not all that hard to dodge. That Yamato, he's just in a bad spot. And you can see right now we've racked up almost 180,000 damage and nearly gotten a Kraken in this very short game. In fact, we plowed through the enemy flank and got all the way to their base, and this was basically a one-sided sweep for our team. So you might look at the results of this and say, oh my gosh, you only hit 9 torpedoes and you did 180,000 damage. This thing is OP. No, I just don't think the enemy team played super effectively in this game, and I think the enemy Shimakaze could have caused me a lot more problems had he tried to spot me. However, I do think the concealment is a problem. I think the most the Shimakaze should be able to get its concealment down to is 5.5, 5.6 kilometers, and I think a global concealment nerf on destroyers is necessary. 5.6 is as far as the Shima can get it down on PC. Why shouldn't it be the same case here? I don't know, but I submit that question to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you think I'm wrong or if you agree with me. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.